mentioned it briefly at the end of last week's podcast, kind of what I was thinking of with this Blink and You'll Miss It retro segment. One thing that I like to do is go down rabbit holes, typically in researching either things for the podcast or things for articles or videos, etc. You also obviously know I'm a huge fan of nostalgia, and there are a few good YouTube channels that specialize in retro commercials from all the way back, 50s, all the way up to, well, I guess retro would be in the early 2000s now. One thing I would do when watching these compilations of old commercials was if something popped up that I didn't remember or had never heard of, I'd pause the video and then go research whatever the product was to see kind of what its story was. And this was months ago, probably in the early fall of last year, that I got the idea that maybe I should make a list of these products, these things that I couldn't remember from these commercials, and then start to make a segment on the podcast about them. Things that were here and gone so fast that it was basically blink and you'll miss it. And it took a while to get enough material to actually do a segment that would be worthwhile. So how this is going to go here and how it'll go in the future, because this will be recurring. Every now and then I'll do another segment. It's going to be a six-pack of products, topics, TV shows. It'll all be similar, grouped together. And I'll kind of give you as much of what I know about them, because I didn't want it to be just another countdown, because I already do a top 5, so that's where the six-pack came from. So this will be the very first Blink and You'll Miss It retro six-pack. These are all food-related, and I'll love to know if any of you out there have ever heard of any of these, ever had these products, or if you're as in the dark as I was. The first subject in this six-pack is actually slightly a bit of a cheat. It is food-related, but it's more food mascot-related. Back in episode 126, I did a segment on obscure product mascots, ones that weren't out or weren't associated with their products very long. They were basically fails. So this one here, number 1, is Mr. O from the SpaghettiOs brand, and Mr. O was in that segment. That's where the tie-in comes from. I grew up in the 1980s, and I had no memory of Mr. O. Like I said in the obscure product mascot segment, this thing honestly looks, it's a puppet, and it honestly looks like a sperm with a red ring around its head. It is this weirdest, trippy, fever dream looking character. The best of my research, what I found was Mr. O was around in the mid-1980s. There are several commercials on YouTube you can find, and this character just raves about the SpaghettiOs and how great they are. In commercials, there's a chef named Gramando, this weird green puppet that looks like it should have been on the Muppet Show. And in other commercials, the Mr. O is getting abducted by Mr. Bad Lunch, who's the evil villain of the SpaghettiOs world.
Oh no, it's Mr. Bad Lunch! Wah!
Lunchtime fun is mine. I've got Mr. O and great tasting SpaghettiOs too.
I haven't got a clue of where they came up with the idea for needing a mascot, a weird-looking puppet to sell SpaghettiOs to kids. I never needed that. That wouldn't have made me want to eat it more. It was just good, SpaghettiOs and meatballs. It's still great. But Mr. O did not last long. No more than a couple of years. All the commercials I found seemed to be 1984 through 86. So if you weren't around back then, you likely would have missed the time that Mr. O was on your TV screens. The second product to talk about is something called Grizzly Chomps Cupcakes.
Yo, I'm here for Hostess Grizzly Chomps, the snack cake for cool bears. Not bears that hibernate, sigh. Cool bears eat Hostess Grizzly Chomps. Chocolate with sprinkles. Tastes great. I know, because I take a chomp out of every one before I put them in a box.
These seem to have come out in the early 1990s and did not last long. The big selling point, I guess, is the fact that these cupcakes came with a bite out of them, where the bear mascot is saying, "I'll start 'em, you finish 'em." So you're getting a cupcake that's already partially eaten. Another big catch was that they were 97% fat-free, which would have been definitely a novel idea for children's snacks from the early 1990s. reading a couple of articles that came out at the time about these Grizzly Chomps, one of the complaints was that the price was the same as many other snack cakes and such from the time, even though these had a bite taken out of them. Like you should have deducted 20% on the cost because you're losing 20% of the cupcake. It's also said that these did not taste good. There are commercials you can find on YouTube for these as well with the bear in the Hawaiian shirt. But essentially, these only lasted maybe 2 years. I can't find anything about them after 1992. Fat-free cupcakes with a bite out of them. Yeah, why wouldn't kids want that? Third here is something called Top Shelf Entrees, and they were made by the Hormel Company.
Now there's Top Shelf from Hormel. Top Shelf microwaves in 2 minutes, but tastes like you might have made it from scratch. And since it requires no refrigeration, you can pack it in a briefcase, and lunch, as they say, is in the bag.
These came out in the late 1980s, 88, 89, and they, again, only lasted a couple of years. They barely made it into the early 1990s. The big marketing catch with these is that they were unfrozen entrees. Rather than the frozen lean cuisines and such, these were not frozen. There were tons of different varieties. Roast beef, fish, lasagna. These were meant to be able to be kept fresh because they were vacuum sealed for up to 18 months. And they were supposedly, you could microwave them in 2 minutes and have one of these 10 different entrees. It all sounds interesting, like it could have been successful, but as far as I could see, these lasted barely 2-3 years. I think people just feared having these unfrozen meals. Because knowing something's frozen, you feel safer about heating it back up. But Top Shelf did not last. And next, number 4, is something called Undercover Bears Oatmeal.
Bears?
Undercover Bears.
It's good.
It's gone. Who can resist the oatmeal with soft, chewy bears that appear when you stir?
Again, there's commercials for this. I mean, obviously, that's how I found all these products. Undercover Bears is instant oatmeal. From the early 1990s is when this came out, and it's all the usual flavors, plain, brown sugar. The big secret with this is that the Undercover Bears were gummy bears inside the oatmeal. So you open the packets, pour them in, put in your hot water or microwave it or whatever, and when you stir it, there's gummy bears in it. I don't know, gummy bears and oatmeal, that just doesn't seem like something that would mix. The commercials have some detective bear in the brown button-down coat, and it's supposed to be all exciting about finding these gummy bears inside your oatmeal. For all that excitement about how it's supposed to be something great for kids, this only lasted maybe 2 years. And again, I can only speak for myself, but I never put any sort of odd candies in my oatmeal. Tons of sugar, yes, but gummy bears, no. Interestingly, speaking of gummy candies, number 5 in our 6-pack here is something called Fruit Rocks from Sunkist.
Are from Earth.
Never heard of it.
We're here for new Sunkist Fruit Rocks fruit snacks.
There are 2 kinds, Fruit Rocks meteorites and galactic gems. Both are made with real fruit.
Wow, you get a lot.
These were supposed to be the fruit snack of the future. There were comets and meteorites. There were different fruit flavors. There was cinnamon flavored. I couldn't nail down when these things actually came out. I've seen anywhere from 1988 to 1990 that they debuted, but they were gone by 1991. I was looking at different posts online. I saw some Reddit posts about this because you can find anything on Reddit. So I found Fruit Rocks. Some people said the closest thing you could compare them to was Shark Bites. So if you're familiar with Shark Bites, that's kind of what Fruit Rocks, I guess, were. But like with all of these, I never heard of them, never had them. And we'll finish up the first Blink and You'll Miss It Retro 6-pack with something called Replay Gum.
Fantastic.
This gum is unbelievable.
Replay. Replay.
Better tasted replay.
what I could gather about Replay gum was that it was created by the Lifesavers Candy Company and came out in the early 1980s, 1981. The commercial I saw had this kind of funky music to it with the slogan, "I demand a replay." And the gum was squares, cubes. It sold for 15 cents for a pack. You got 5 cubes of this gum in all the usual flavors, spearmint, bubble. You can actually find packs of this gum on eBay, sealed. I just looked at one from 1981. $85 for a pack of Replay gum. All I know is this gum did not last very long. The only commercials I saw were basically 1981, so I would figure 81, 82, it was probably gone. Unless some of you out there had it, did it last longer? Did you have Replay gum? But there, we finished our first 6-pack. Have you heard of any of those things that I just mentioned in this Blink and You'll Miss It segment? Like I said, if you're really interested, there are commercials for all of these online. I mean, I put little clips in there, but I don't think if you've never heard of it, it's not going to help you remember. And this will be a recurring segment every now and then. It'll be a similar topic. I have found a lot of children's toys, a lot of TV shows. But it just goes to show you, as much as I love nostalgia, there were some things that came in with a bang and faded away quick, or just faded away quick.